Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom Nixon. My guest this week is California State Librarian Greg Lucas. Greg was appointed California's 25th State Librarian by Governor Jerry Brown in 2014. Prior to his appointment, Greg was the Capitol Bureau Chief for the San Francisco Chronicle, where he covered politics and policy at the state capitol for nearly 20 years. During Greg's tenure as state librarian, the state library's priorities have been to improve reading skills throughout the state, put library cards in the hands of every school kid, and provide all Californians the information they need, no matter what community they live in. Since 2015, the state library has improved access for millions of Californians by connecting libraries to a high-speed internet network. Greg holds a master's in library and information science. Interestingly, he earned that after becoming California State Librarian, and we'll talk about that. Welcome, Greg.
Well, thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. So why don't we start by talking a little bit about your career trajectory? How did you get here?
How did I get here? Well, I spent 20 years working for the San Francisco Chronicle as a reporter, mainly in Sacramento, covering government and politics, and left the Chronicle at the time when a lot of media outlets were scaling back in the early 2007, I guess. And, the Chronicle said we have to get rid of 48 people. And so I'm a Warren Buffett nut. I used to go to the shareholder meetings. And so some gentleman in the audience asked Warren Buffett, hey, what's up with the newspaper industry? And he says, newspapers are only essential to advertisers when they're essential to readers. And that was no longer the case. I came back to California. I said, hey, give me the severance check. I'm out. And then I did freelancing after that. And I ended up I was at a friend's birthday party. And a legislative friend started asking me about the state library and saying, do you know anyone who would be good as state librarian? And there was an acting state librarian there at the time, I think. And so I'm laughing. It's like, why are you asking me? Why would I even know? Why would I even care? And by the end of the party, I thought it would be a great idea for me to apply for the job. And so I applied for the job. And a woman I knew from my years as a reporter had gone to work for Jerry Brown in the appointments unit. And so she called me back and said, Greg, we have your application here for state librarian. Were you loaded or do you mean it? And I said, I think I mean it. And she said, good, I think you'd be terrific. So there was a series of these interviews and then nothing happened for a year. One day my phone goes off and it's like, hey, this is the governor's office. Like, well, can you come over here immediately? Why? Well, for a job interview. I said, for what? He said, state librarian, silly. I get over there. They push me into this room with Jerry Brown. And we spent about 45 minutes talking a lot about his family history, right? His family goes back to the 1840s or 1860s in California. And a lot about the state archives because he used to be the Secretary of State, and that's who manages the state archives, which is different from the state library. And I remember during the conversation, I said, well, look, I'm excited about the job, but to the extent that people know there's a state librarian, you're going to get some blowback by appointing some broken down old newspaper man when there's 17,000 rockin' people working in libraries around California, right? Who in fact have a background in librarianship. And that didn't seem to bother him. And so I said, well, look, I will promise you that I will go and get a librarian degree, a degree in information sciences, if you appoint me, right? And so that didn't seem, okay, whatever. That didn't really move him that much either. And at the end of the conversation, he said, hey, it's great that you use the archives. We'll get back to you. So I walked back to my office. Like I say, I was freelancing then. And that's about a 5-minute walk from the state capitol. And when I got there, there was a draft press release announcing my appointment. I said, hey, look, my folks were alive then. Can I call my folks and tell them first before we put this out? And that is how I became the state librarian. And, right, not surprisingly, I mean, there was some blowback from librarians. Like, really? Like, why are you pointing this guy who has no background in libraries as the state librarian?
I remember I for a time was the library services manager for Fresno Unified. I
Oh,
managed all their libraries, and no, and we weren't even in public libraries, and yet it was a bit of a thing. You seem to have worked past it.
uh, well, I mean, I'm grateful for it on a certain level. Um, but what it made me do was I made a conscious decision to go out and visit public libraries, primarily
Mm,
because it's significantly harder for someone to say you're an asshole to your face. And so I thought by going to public libraries and saying hello and seeing what they're doing and learning more about it, that I mean, it would at least demonstrate that I have a commitment to the job. And the best part of doing that was getting a much richer understanding of what libraries do for a community and the value of investing in. I mean,
mm,
I've loved libraries all my life, right? It's and
sure.
everyone's got a great library story, um, but I didn't really appreciate how much happens there, and it shifted my focus in this job. I
Mm,
mean, I used to think it was kind of like I'd go around and give speeches and talk a little bit about California history and stuff like that. And I, it's this is one of those cool jobs where, to a certain extent, you can create the job you want it to be. You can focus on what it
nice.
is that's important to you. And by going and visiting those libraries, I mean, there's 1,127 libraries in California. It's the most of any state. It's more than some countries,
Right.
and realizing what they provide, and school libraries as well. Um, that completely shifted my focus and made me want to do more to get the folks with the checkbooks to understand the value of writing a check to support libraries.
Where did you go to get your library degree?
I went to San Jose State. They have a fully online program. And there are other schools that offer the degree in California, like UCLA has a terrific program. But you have to show up in person, and it was hard holding down this job
Right.
and have the potential of commuting to LA a couple days a week. I just didn't think that was feasible. But it was a terrific experience. I mean, at least 90% of my homework assignments were challenges that I was facing here at the state library. So it's like, okay, cool. I'll write about what's going on here at the state library and then get all this free input from like experts from around the country on how to address it. I mean, it was an
No,
incredibly smart uh, investment, or turned out to be.
kind of a unique opportunity. I can only imagine what your classmates must have thought about having you in class with them.
Well, I tried not to. I tried for it like to be. I tried to keep it secret, and that didn't work very well. And then I had one of my professors who's still a good friend, and she was at that time the head of a library at Sunnyvale, I think, Sunnyvale
Mm.
Library. And so she calls and says, I just discovered that you're the state librarian. I said, uh huh. And I just want to make sure that your success in this class, or lack of success, doesn't in any way affect the our ability to get grants from the state library. And I said, well, don't kid yourself. There's a direct correlation between how well I do in your class and how much dough you're going to get. And so there's like the pause on the other end, right? Like, and then I said, I'm only joking. And that's when we became friends. And her class was fantastic. It was a lot about leadership and management and looking for opportunities, right?
Hmm.
Rather than, uh, you know, kind of protecting what you've got, looking for ways where you can expand that and find partnerships.
So, how did your previous employment, being an editor, being a reporter, how did that prepare you for this job?
Uh, well, in a couple different ways. I think one coming with curiosity, right? So the central part of being a reporter is asking questions. And so this was a new world for me. So, and it still is, right? The way we deliver and process information with each other. I mean, that's changing all the time, right? AI is like kind of the latest wrinkle. But so there's always something new, and trying to understand that. I think not being shy about asking questions, having that being sort of part of my work experience was helpful. I think coming to the world of libraries without a library background also has some value to it. Because somebody like that is more likely to say, why are we doing this? I mean, this is just for us. This isn't helping the customers necessarily, right? But
Right.
what's why do we organize things this way? I mean, I remember when I started, there was somebody here who said, we shouldn't do anything to publicize what we do here at the state library, because then the people across the street in the legislature will want to close us down, sell all the books, and use it to balance the budget. And so I said, okay, well, that's cool. But alternatively, right, we could tell people about all the great stuff we're doing, and then they would never think that there wasn't some valuable thing that we provide. And I think more than sort of editing and writing skills, and asking questions, I think the biggest benefit was my familiarity with the process. So I've worked around politicians, I've worked around the legislative process, I've worked with people in different, governors' administrations over the span of 20 years. So if there's something that I know people to call to help out or to give me answers. And I'm familiar with the political process. So I think those were the skills that were most helpful from the newspaper experience.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because as much as this is a library job, this is absolutely a political job as well. Because
More so than, I mean, a lot of the skills that I learned at San Jose State that would make me it would make me a credible a branch manager or librarian in a public library. That's not what I do every day here. I mean, I'm calling people up and trying to cajole them and get them to do stuff that they should be doing on their own without me reminding them that libraries are important. So you're right. It's more of a advocacy sort of role to some extent.
So, since you became the state librarian, you've provided a wide variety of resources to California, both to our public libraries and our school libraries, but also across the state. What makes you the most proud?
Uh, well, I think there's two things that have had the greatest impact. And one is the connecting of libraries to the same broadband network that the University of California is part of, state universities, community colleges, public schools. And so there were 10 years ago, I mean, there were still libraries where you stick the phone in the little cups, we used to call it the mojo wire at the newspaper. But I mean, these kind of digital dial ups and crappy
Right.
connectivity. And I mean, it goes without saying that if I had stopped uh, in 2010 at the level of connectivity I had then, today I'd be behind. I wouldn't
Right.
be able to really function in the world that exists now. And so the ability to have to be connected to this larger network that includes all these different entities, and two, to be able to provide the sorts of services that people both need and expect digitally,
Mm-hmm.
is that's been a significant change. The legislation, and I should credit the broadband network, right? It's called CalRen is the entity that does it. Scenic is the other acronym that goes with it. But they were eager to connect libraries. So, I mean, a lot of the impetus for that came from them. The legislature provided us with almost $500 million for library improvements. I mean, half of California's libraries are 40 years of age or older.
Right.
So those kind of facility challenges can make it impossible to have the sort of wiring that you need to deliver 21st century connectivity. So and just it's kind of the nature of government, right? But if it isn't immediately broken, like there's never enough money to do everything you want. So if there isn't some health or safety issue, we'll postpone this and deal with it another time. So there were hundreds of millions of dollars worth of, we need a new HVAC system, new roofs, things like that. And so that money, the 500 million, there was a local match to it. I mean, that ended up creating about $750 million worth of improvements in local libraries. And that's fantastic. There's still another 4 billion in need out there, but we hadn't done anything like that in years. There hadn't been a library bond on the ballot for 20 years. And this was straight up money in the budget. So you don't have to pay for it 3 times like a bond, right? You know, because you're paying the interest over 30 years. And I think that was, we get all kinds of compliments, the library, for that sort of work. And it's nice now we're a year past that. I mean, it'd be great if there was more money because it's needed for sure. But it's nice now we get the invitations to go to the groundbreaking or the ribbon cutting or the whatever it happens to be. And it's just really cool to see communities turn out and be supportive of the libraries and to see how much more libraries can do, right, in a kind of a refurbished, more modernized way.
Well, I can certainly speak to, from the other side of things, the Compass resources that were rolled out and that I get regular emails about, which is good, to remind me that they're out there. That made a big difference. So many schools didn't have online databases, didn't have all these what we would consider standard research tools for libraries.
Well, thank you for saying that. That was the third thing I was going to say. And that a lot of the credit for that goes to Governor Brown's chief of staff, the one who believed in me and put me in this job. I came to her one year and said, we're the only state that doesn't do this. And she, unlike many people in politics, she said, we should do something about that. And like I say, unlike many people in politics, she did something about it and put money in the budget. And this administration, the Newsom administration, augmented that by another, 2.5 million. But it's cool. We're connected to 96% now, I think, of the 6 million kids in school. And we're working now to try and integrate it better in, I've forgotten what they use now, but so there's like an interface that kids have, like Canvas or something like that, where they sign into their computer and it goes to like Greg's Canvas account, right? And so we're trying to find a way where we can plug like a widget into that, where you can just click right into it to make it easier for kids to get to that stuff.
Oh, nice.
But some of it's awesome, right? The PBS video library, and even for old farts like me, right? I mean, and National Geographic for kids. The latest thing we bought was, I'm going to get the name wrong, but it's an early learning thing. Pebble Go, right? So all the experts we have who look at this stuff said, you need this, and it's expensive, so we could only afford one of the modules, maybe is the term of art. But the thing they do on science, it was just, it's awesome. And I mean, it's like, maybe because it's like, that's my level of science understanding, but I think, this is a really cool way to engage kids. And I think there's it's a central part of what California is to create, right, opportunity for everyone who wants it. And these are, in the greater scheme of things, really inexpensive ways to offer access to opportunity for anyone who wants to use it. right? So like we did a 2-year pilot program in online tutoring, 3 million hits in 2 years, right? For
Wow.
public school kids, 5 different languages, math, language arts, a real person, right? A real person you're talking to. It's not some AI thing. And I mean, that's like the ultimate in access to opportunity, right? Any kid can get tutoring who wants it, as opposed to you have to be able to afford it because it's pretty pricey, right? For to do that.
Right.
But anyway, we're trying to get that restored. We used one-time money for that, and so it went away when the one-time money went away. So it's just convincing people of the value that provides.
What do you think the future is for these resources? Budgets are going to be interesting over the next few years, certainly. Uh,
Well, I think, I mean, relatively speaking, it's if I have to reduce the budget, I mean, the amount of money that's spent on that the state spends in support of public libraries is pretty small.
hmm,
I mean, I would argue that you're going to make more money for the state in tax revenue by a modest increase in the support that the state provides for public libraries, because public libraries help people like retool, right? I mean, what's happening in the world right now? So, I mean, jobs that are cognitively or physically repetitive, you're being replaced, but people are losing jobs to machines, or they're
right.
losing jobs just because the industry changes, or they're trying to get a new job that requires you have an M1 certificate that says that you can operate a piece of 21st century machinery. And
Hmm,
those are things that libraries help you get, like, to say nothing of things like citizenship and all those different elements. And so the more robust and strong that local libraries are, the more you're able to allow Californians to find what it is that to get to where they want to go.
hmm,
And the joke I used to talk about was like literacy programs, right? If you teach me to read, right, that means I can take a written test. If I can take a written test, then I'm going to get a better paying job. If I get a better paying job, then you, the government, doesn't have to spend as much money supporting me and my family. And, right, because I have a better paying job, I'm going to be paying you more in taxes that you can go invest in other stuff the government wants to do. And
hmm.
I mean, it sounds hokey, but I mean, if we had more strong readers, a lot of these challenging, vexing problems that we face wouldn't be as challenging and vexing. I
Oh,
mean, reading
absolutely.
is the greatest, right, superpower that there is. Stronger readers are more successful. Stronger readers are more empathetic. Stronger readers are better problem solvers and more collaborative. I mean, it like I say, it sounds kind of like
Hmm.
lame and Pollyanna-ish when I say it, but I mean, if the more stronger readers we have, the way better, right, things would be in California and around the world for that matter. But
Absolutely. I know that one of your goals has been to focus on reading, which hasn't necessarily always been a goal of the state library. Not, I don't know that they didn't see the connection or what you may have, but uh, clearly that's changed under your leadership.
well, it's born out of these visits to local libraries. I mean, local libraries are, and school libraries even more so, I think, are an essential part of the education system in California. And so people don't really think about that. Everybody loves libraries, right? I
Right.
mean, I've yet to find someone that says, "Oh, why don't we wipe all the libraries off the face of the earth? These things are worthless," right? Everyone like has a great library story. Everyone loves libraries, but I think I think people don't see the connection that there's this spectrum, right, of learning. There's things that public schools can do that libraries can't do. But in the space before a little kid goes to kindergarten, I mean, that's where libraries come in, right? That's where they're going to story times to learn sounds and to do the building blocks of what it takes to be, right, a
Right.
strong reader. And Where do kids go to complete homework? Where do kids go to get in-person tutoring? Right, a lot of that's a space that libraries provide, and school libraries. Right. I mean, if you
Right.
stood on my shoulders, there's a stack of studies taller than the two of us that says, "Hey, kids do better in a public school that has like a school library." And
Right.
and yet, right, depending upon what survey you look at, we have 600 teacher librarians, right? Somebody with a teaching and a library credential, 600 of them for 6 million school kids. Texas has
Right.
4,200 and something for 5 million school kids. Like that.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, but I mean, we're kind of, well, you know this better than me, but I mean, we're sort of in a chicken and an egg situation. I think there was a period kind of around when the internet was new and exciting, where the thinking was, well, what do we need physical libraries for? We have the internet, right? But now that's changing, right? And people are appreciating the value of a library, a space. You call it what you want, right? The media center or whatever it happens to be. Um, but I mean, the value of school libraries is something that uh, is underappreciated, has been underappreciated, but now more and more school districts are seeing the value in having them. But now there's kind of this chicken and egg thing that's happening where it's like, okay, we want a teacher librarian, but there aren't any out there to hire. And so we need to create more teacher librarians through, I'd like to see an incentive program where you want to be a teacher librarian, hey, we'll pay for half of your library degree, right? Or we'll give you some kind of thing to help make it easier for you to become one.
Well, I know many people who would appreciate that effort for
Well,
sure.
right, because what's happening now most commonly is it's a teacher who wants to do something different, right? And
Right.
so the path that's creating most of the school librarians now seems to be that. So it's like providing a teacher with a library degree, and those aren't as expensive or as doesn't take as long as a teaching credential.
So, why is it important for all students to have a library card?
Uh, why is it important? I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I
Mm.
was always looking for ways to, you know, cutting corners would be the wrong way to say it, but I was looking for ways to make my academic life as easier, right? And
Hmm.
so a library card provides access to like all kinds of resources. And now, right, through digital connectivity, I mean, I can sit at home in my jammies and go to the library. It's not as cool as if I'm there physically, but I mean, I can connect with a library card to all these resources that are going to
Right.
help me do my homework better, that are going to help me succeed better in school, that are going to help me become a richer person.
Mm.
And I mean, it's just easy. I mean, what does it cost? It costs absolutely nothing.
Right.
And it's like an invitation to this whole world. It's like you're living in a closed room and all of a sudden you open the window. I mean, that's a little overblown, but that's the equivalent of what a library card is. Whatever resources you can tap into, right? I mean, here's all these other ones. And they often they not often, but they have the benefit of a higher level of reliability than some of the stuff I might find on my own poking
Right.
around on the internet.
For sure. When you look to the future of the California State Library, where are your concerns? Do you
Um,
have concerns?
yeah, I'm not sure I have concerns. We've been focusing on uh, making sure that the state library for the largest state in the nation, for the whatever it is, like we flip back and forth between what the fourth and the fifth largest economy in the world. I think the privilege of this job and the challenge is to create a state library that's reflective of the largest state in the nation, like California, right? Our population is bigger than 163 of the 195 countries in the world. And we're also the most diverse group of people that have ever been brought together as equals in the history of human civilization. mean, there's something like UC says there's something like 260 languages and dialects spoken here. 40% of the state was born in another country. And so for a long time, what the state library collected, right, was primarily my history, old white man. So we've been focusing a lot of energy on making sure that our collections and what we put online, that the priority is to demonstrate, right, the diversity, to share as diverse an amount of California stories as we can. And as a state, we're richer for that diversity, right? I think of it as kind of being California's superpower. And there's so many terrific stories to share. It's more, the challenge is more picking and choosing, right? And finding the best stories among the 4 million books and diaries and manuscripts that we have. And also in supporting local cultural heritage entities, right, that are collecting the stories of their communities. State of California doesn't do very much to support local historical societies or archives or museums or libraries that have kind of a historical, component to them, like local history centers or something like that. And we have a small grant program that helps them, but I mean, it isn't the sort of concerted effort that some other states make.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. For our listeners, please like, subscribe, and share wherever you see and or hear us. Again, thank you very much, Greg.